When you're ready.
Individuals coming together after great forms of adversity. In reading all the other artifacts, I saw a similarity in the excerpt from The Long Walk to Freedom and in their own words about the 2010 Haitian earthquake. The Long Walk to Freedom is a story about Nelson Mandela and his fight to end segregation in South Africa and his time in prison. During his 27-year sentence, this excerpt emphasizes the time of hardships and how it caused his fellow inmates to support each other and gain courage when it seemed like there was no hope for a better life. In the aftermath of the Haitian earthquake, survivors were seen embracing each other and willing to help strangers find their families. The connection clicked right away as I noticed that individuals were bonding in times of hardship solely based on the adversity faced together. So then I went into more detail and began researching on how humans react to adversity. The connection I ended up with was that both the artifacts talk about is how individuals who face adversity together have the subconscious tendency to bond and be more compassionate with others. By digging deeper into these artifacts, it led me to create the question, does adversity cause people to come together to support one another through resilience? By researching many forms of adverse events and studies, I came to the conclusion, yes, great adversity causes resilient individuals to come together with support and sympathy for one another. Going deeper into my research, I found a study conducted by Marcus Heinrichs and Bernadette von Dowens, where they separated men into two groups and asked them to do various tasks, except one of the groups was under pressure and one of them was not. The study found that the men under stress were more compassionate and more trustworthy in each other than the control group. The reason the study was conducted was because men were thought to become more isolated and angry during times of stress. But this proved that humans, including men, have tendencies to become more compassionate and trustworthy to other people in chaos. In another study conducted and reported by Benjamin A. Converse was observing people in chaotic situations. Converse found that the majority of people show greater generosity and helpfulness when in chaos. These studies help us understand how the subconscious human behaviors in small adverse events, which then leads us to understand why humans react to horrific adversity the way that we do. Once I understood the human behavior during times of stress and smaller forms of adversity, I found that it applied to many well-known events that have occurred. In my research, I focused on Nelson Mandela's time in prison, the 2010 Haitian earthquake, and the terrorist attacks on 9/11. I started off my research with background on information on Nelson Mandela, and here's what you need to know. He was the first South African president, and he was an anti-apartheid activist. He fought against segregation in South Africa, but eventually his fight spread worldwide, and that won him the Nobel Peace Prize in 1993 due to his long, hard fight against segregation and racism altogether. He was an incredibly resilient person, and when prison became really tough to live through, he saw that his other inmates were supporting each other and gaining courage and bravery off of one another. Each inmate trusted each other more and showed more gratitude because they were all arrested for fighting against segregation. In 2010, a catastrophic earthquake hit Haiti, and nearly 250,000 lives were lost because of it. Thousands of people lost their families and friends, homes were destroyed, and many people were displaced and couldn't find their families. Haiti's political system was corrupt, and many leaders didn't do much to help recover belongings and get Haiti back on its feet. However, even in the most destroyed places of Haiti, individuals were seen helping strangers bury their loved ones and find lost belongings. Haitians showed compassion and sympathy for others in their country due to this tragic natural disaster. This great adversity caused destruction and catastrophe, but it also created a supportive and gratuitous community and culture. Lastly, on September 11, 2001, at 8:46 and 9:03 a.m., two planes crashed into the Twin Towers in New York City. This terrorist attack changed America forever. 2,996 lives were lost that day, and it affected millions of people, meaning that survivors, firemen, families, and even civilians in the area faced horrific adversity. After this tragedy, New Yorkers had much more sympathy for and trust in one another, and strangers grieved together and helped support others if their loved ones were lost due to the attack. Each of these events shows the pattern of individuals supporting each other in difficult times, by understanding how humans react to being under stress and chaos through these studies and seeing how they're applied in real-world events. We begin to understand how to deal with adversity, and we as individuals learn more about ourselves in the process. Even though, as humans, it is a subconscious behavior to seek others for trust and gratitude in difficult times, some individuals react differently. Some individuals choose to seek isolation from others and find it harder to work with their peers than on their own. This was noticed by researchers after the attack on 9/11, when people were being diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. More than half of the people inside the Twin Towers showed similar reactions and no signs of PTSD, along with people that were miles away from the towers themselves. Then there were the same signs of PTSD and similar behavior from both people inside the Twin Towers and people miles away. This shows that adversity affects everyone differently, and the compassion and gratitude is merely just a pattern of behavior that the majority of humans have, not necessarily all of them. It is moreover a tendency to react that way for most people, but grieving and resilience is a different feeling for everybody, and individuals that do prefer to be isolated after adversity, it is a completely normal reaction. Environmental factors and genetic predispositions have the biggest influence on behavior, which also influence how we react to adversity. By noticing a pattern consistent with the long walk to freedom, and in their own words, I was able to understand how and why humans are more positive towards one another when facing adversity. I was able to understand studies performed with small forms of adversity, which then led me to tragic real-world crises. And being able to connect those studies, how we as humans react to those type of situations, and how humans react to those type of situations. One thing people should take away from this is to not be afraid to ask others for help during times of adversity, no matter how severe they are.
Thanks. A couple of questions. What evidence did you gather that you didn't include, and why did you choose not to include it?
Yeah, I chose not to include information about brain chemistry and the neurological side of resilience because I found that the social and behavioral side was much more impactful. I still included the scientific lens by talking about psychological studies done that directly reflected into my research, but I was just more focused on that psychology aspect rather than the neuroscience.
Okay, thank you. A second question. What additional questions emerged from your research, and why are they important?
Even though I didn't include it, a big question that came up was how much does our brain chemistry information have an effect on how humans react to adversity? I became very curious on the neurological side of adversity and how brain changes and adapts to how we overcome difficulties. Even though I didn't include it in my research because researching behavior from the social lens was much more compelling and impactful, I still am very curious of how much of our genetics can be, how can they affect how we react to adverse events.
All right, cool.